Hello and welcome back to My Mom's Basement, ladies and gentlemen. It is Robbie Fox, and I am here with the one and only Jeff Tremaine. Of course, you know him from Jackass and his Motley Crue biopic, The Dirt. But today we are going to be talking about Nothing But a Good Time, the uncensored story of 80s hair metal. It's a new documentary streaming on Paramount Plus September 17th. I was really excited for this the second it was announced. I was lucky enough to get some screeners, and I loved it. I love music documentaries in general. And I thought this one really lived up to the hype. I love the choice to animate some of the crazier stories in it. How are you? Thanks for being here.
Of course, man. I'm good. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we had a lot of crazy stories, right? And this is back in the era where not everyone had a camera on them, right? So some of these stories are needed illustration, and so we found a guy named Eric Brown who did an awesome job in animating them. So yeah.
When did this come into the fold for you? When did you start working on this documentary?
So it was actually about 3 years ago. It was my old TV agent left and partnered up with this production company called Spoke, who optioned the book. There's a book. This is based on a book called Nothing But a Good Time, and asked me if I wanted to partner in and make it. And I thought, yeah, I would love to do a music doc. You know, I love docs, and so I've never done a music doc. So
I know you've done a couple 30 for 30s before. What is it like actually like directing a documentary as someone that's completely unaware of that side of filmmaking?
well, you got to find all the interview subjects and try to make a connection with them so they'll tell you their great stories, right? And I'm on on the 30 for 30s and this, I was the one doing the interviews. So uh, yeah, that's the first thing. You got to kind of figure out who you're going to talk to, and while I'm doing that, we've got a whole team doing research on finding all of the archival footage and everything else. So there's a
Is
lot
that
to.
also like, is that the most challenging part, getting people to open up and not to seem like you're trying to get like a crazy story out of them?
Yeah, for this in particular, because this was a different time in a different era, right? Where the world has changed, and a lot of these stories are pretty crazy. And, there's a lot of sex and drugs and rock and roll stories that I was trying to dig up. So um, yeah, it's a little scary to put your neck out there in this time, right? Like this
Yeah.
scene wouldn't even happen probably if cell phones and social media was around. Like,
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that would have been bad. Bad for the scene.
yeah, maybe. So,
You mentioned loving music documentaries in general. I also love music documentaries. I wanted to know if you have one particular favorite or any you consider like must watches.
well, we actually interviewed Penelope Spheris, who I would say Decline of the Western Civilization 1 and Decline of the Western Civilization 2, the metal years, are both must watches. Like, she captured the LA punk scene, the beginning of it, right? Just awesome. And then so that's the first one. And then the metal years is really about this era that we are talking about. So
Yeah.
I heard during it. And, she also directed Wayne's World, by the way. It's just
Ever heard
yeah,
of it? Yeah.
she's awesome, man. Yeah, let's leave it at that. Those are two that I would recommend.
Great ones. Was there anything in particular with this documentary that going in, you wanted to get something across with it? Something that some of the other metal documentaries haven't.
Um, well, I wanted to just show respect and love for this scene. Like, even I wasn't a huge hair metal fan growing up. Like, and I'm an '80s kid. I was the right age, but I was kind of a little more into punk rock at the time. So I didn't really love it when it was happening, but I've grown to love it over time. And the fact that these songs have lasted for 40 years, uh,
Yeah.
made it so, so I learned a lot making this about these bands and how much work they put into it, and how, the scene started off as a DIY scene, right? You're just making this big production out of a tiny little stage, and you're recording your own music, you're fucking doing all your own marketing. These guys were hustlers, like beyond
Yeah.
just musicians, right? So yeah, I just have a lot of respect for this whole scene.
And did you have any people that you like specifically wanted to interview for this that you'd never met before? Like when this came up, you were like, "Oh, I'll get to meet so and so and interview them."
I hadn't met any of them, like except for
Oh,
like
wow, really?
There's a few. I did know Tom Zutat, and I got to meet Doc McGee doing the Dirt, but none of the other musicians that are like I didn't know any of them. But like reading the book, I definitely wanted to get Jack Russell, who recently passed away, unfortunately, um, because of that story that we got him telling about when he had just joined. Jack's the singer of Great White, but he was in a band before that, same band pretty much. They just were called uh, Dante Fox, and he was like 17 or something, 16, and kind of into cocaine at the time. But he thought it'd be a good idea while they're becoming a band to start robbing drug dealers, right? So he was like arm robbing drug dealers at a ripe age of 17. And he tells the craziest story of one time he was on PCP and he tried to rob this coke dealer and ended up shooting a maid at the house through a door, went through her shoulder, and he got arrested and, you know, did time, basically did 2 years in prison and then got back into Dante Fox. They became Great White, became a huge sensation, right? So
That
that
was
was
one of my favorite stories in the whole documentary. It's
yeah,
amazing.
mine too. It's crazy, but uh, yeah, there's a few stories that I just love, um, the band Wasp, right? There was a guy who made their outfits for him. He made a lot of the leather work and crazy outfits for the whole era. His name is Al Bain, and he tells the story of making this saw blade that Blackie Lawless used to wear as a codpiece, this giant circular saw blade, super sharp. And he had to go to Jet Propulsion Laboratories, where our top rocket scientists work, to figure out how to cut the saw blade so he could wear it over his dick. I just thought that was the funniest. That's what we're using our rocket scientists to figure out how to put a saw blade around a guy's dick while he sings. So
That was amazing as well. Yeah, all of that was cracking me up. Also, I was mind blown by the whole Dante Fox thing. I've known of Great White, of course, forever, but
yeah.
my childhood dog was named Dante, and the fact that Dante Fox was the name, it was a weird, like, mind blown thing for me watching the doc today. It
Yeah.
surprises me to hear that you hadn't met a lot of these people. I guess I had just assumed that you might have been around the scene or grown up around the scene because of your involvement with the Dirt and how long you were attached to that.
Like I no, I wasn't involved in the scene at all. I liked Motley Crue growing up. I wasn't a super fan. I never even saw them. I moved out to Los Angeles in 1989 while this scene was at its absolute biggest. And the Sunset Strip, I used to just avoid it because it was so jammed up. Like it was crazy. Like you couldn't walk. The sidewalk was 10 people wide for as far as you could see, all from the rain, or it was Gazzari's back then, all the way down to the Whiskey, even further, all the way down to Tower Records. It was just this crazy rush of people. So you never went there. I never went there because I just avoided that huge crowd, right? So, um, but yeah, I was, I was aware of what they were doing. I like Guns N' Roses a lot,
Yeah.
but I really learned about the scene reading the book and interviewing all the people and doing the dirt, so.
And how did the relationship with Motley even start then? If like you didn't know them and in the
Okay,
scene
so
yet?
yeah, I got so that book came out in 2001, right? And
Yep.
we read it. I probably read it in 2002 as we were making the first Jackass movie. And as I'm reading the book and all the crazy antics, we're going through that same shit. So
Yeah.
I love that book. I mean, it was an extreme version of what we were going through, but it was I mean, similar all the way through to the addiction and all of this shit that, not just the fun, crazy stuff, but the hard stuff too. And that movie became available in 2010. The script was at Paramount and then became available. And I went after that. Like I said, that's the movie. If I'm going to do a scripted movie, that's the one I want to do. Even though I wasn't the biggest Motley Crue fan, I was a fan. I wanted to tell that story with authenticity because one, I love the 80s. I'm an 80s kid, but two, I just, I sat front row and watched all that shit happen in real life. So I just wanted to get that story right.
And did it change a lot? Like from the first time that you got involved with talking about the Dirt to the final cut, did the actual story change a lot or no?
Well,
Obviously, it follows the book, but
it follows the book, but yeah, we there was a script that lasted, that Rich Wilkes wrote, and then we rewrote a lot of it, but kept some of his stuff in it. It was, it evolved as we, I was involved. I was attached to that script for 8 years before it got made, and I
I
just sat.
remember. I was one of the fans following the process and the
Oh, cool.
pre-production and trying to
Yeah,
hope that, hoping that it would get made one day.
yeah, and it kept getting close to getting made, and then like, it just was a long, arduous process. So it
Yeah.
definitely evolved. Yeah, we didn't make up stuff. We were just taking it from the book and figuring out
Yeah.
this makes sense. How do you take a whole 40-year career and boil it down to 90 minutes? So
Yeah. And obviously you couldn't include all of that, but was there anything in particular that you like really wanted to include that you just couldn't get in the final cut?
I don't. Yeah, there, I'm sure there was. But man, my brain isn't working today very well. I don't remember. Like we got most of what I wanted in there. So
As
uh,
like a diehard Motley fan, obviously a younger diehard Motley fan, I loved it. And it's like a go-to rewatch for me as well. I find it such an easy rewatch.
cool. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Now going back to hair metal, I know you weren't the biggest hair metal fan growing up, but could you name your personal top four hair metal albums?
Top four albums. Well, Shout at the Devil, Appetite for Destruction, and then after that, I wouldn't be. I guess in doing this, I would say "Look What the Cat Dragged In" by Poison. Yeah, I wasn't album oriented because I wasn't buying the album. So now when I hear it, it's all just the songs. It's because it's all streaming, so I don't
Yeah.
know the albums. I do love Wasp. I'm trying to think of the name of the album, but I bought a vinyl vintage Wasp record not too long ago, and I can't think of the name of the album, but it's got Blind in Texas in it. It's awesome.
Yeah. I
So
think they opened up for Kiss on, it might have been like the Animalized tour. It was one of the tours where Kiss wasn't wearing makeup. And all of the stories from that tour was right after the first Wasp album had come out. And all of the stories were that they basically like blew the roof off the place before Kiss even got on stage.
fucking Wasp. So we show from Penelope Spheres' Decline of the Western to uh, Chris Holmes, the guitar player from Wasp, is sitting in a pool and he's just fucking wasted drinking vodka straight out of a bottle, chugging it, and then handing the bottle to his mom, who's sitting right next to her, next to the pool, and she starts drinking it. It's one of the most iconic scenes. And when I was a kid, when I watched that movie, I thought, oh, fuck, that is awesome. And then as I've watched it more recently, it's sort of a sad to me scene. Like he's just really in
Yeah.
the gnarly alcoholism, but it's an iconic fucking image. Like he's just floating in his leather, in the pool. And it's just the craziest scene. And we talked about that. I talked to Penelope about it. And she thought they didn't get anything when she filmed that scene. She's like, we got to redo this. He's just too drunk and whatever. Turns out it's the biggest scene in that movie.
Yeah. Like a truly iconic shot. That's crazy.
Iconic. Yeah. So because I'm like, you must have known you had gold right then. She's like,
Yeah.
no. Like I thought we didn't get shit.
That's wild. Yeah. And then do you see yourself in the future going more into the documentaries or going more into like feature films like you've done in the past?
I don't never know what's coming next, but I love documentaries so much that I always want to keep making them on any level, whether I'm producing them or directing them. I just love it's just so fun to tell a story that happened and go back and find all the images, and you know it's a hard, interesting process.
Yeah. Do you watch all kinds of documentaries? Like what genre would you focus in on?
right right now, the one I'm dying to watch, which I haven't watched yet, is Chimp Crazy. But uh, I watch a lot of true crime docs. I watch a lot of like kind of just weird reality TV, like car shows. And I'm not even a car guy. I watch people
Oh, like
make
the F1 stuff?
not F1, more like no, just like guys who make lowriders and shit. Like just
Oh, I'm
cool.
into that. And I'm not a car guy either, but I could get down with that.
I love watching these dudes who don't look like artists create a beautiful thing. That
Yeah. If
just
anyone's passionate about anything, I could listen to them talk about it, I think.
yeah, yeah, and I love
Yeah.
seeing something that starts from scratch and ends up being this beautiful thing. So Yeah, I can watch like home renovation shows. You know?
Yeah, yeah. Some HGTV shit. I hope people are going to be watching this. Paramount Plus, September 17th. It is an awesome documentary, truly something. It reminded me of like some of the awesome music documentaries I would watch staying home from school and just binging, VH1 all day. I really loved it. So congrats on the release and good luck in the future.
All right, awesome.